Here we enter one of the best-known rooms in the world, a cavernous chamber, an assembly hall, where nearly all the world's leading figures since the Second World War have at some point gathered. Here, all the 193 nations of the United Nations are represented. The UN had just 51 members when the organisation was founded in 1945.
In the development of this organisation rests the only true alternative to war.
You often hear the term the world stage used. Every September it is quite literally here. It was on this stage that leaders from East and West have spoken. Peace plans have been discussed, sometimes wars have been averted. Governments and regimes came and then fell and were replaced by the new order. Over 70 years, the scope of work done by the UN has grown, and so has the size of this often bureaucratic organisation. Over the period of its existence, the UN has spent a staggering $750 billion. Its struggle to solve current crises, a war in Syria that's cost more than 250,000 lives, the rise of ISIL, and a refugee crisis that's spread from the region to Europe. So is the UN still fit for purpose? Many of the main criticisms concern the way it's run. Does it need more forceful leadership? The man who serves as Secretary General, and in 70 years it's always been a man, has to follow a cautious path, making sure that he doesn't upset the most powerful nations. And in many ways the system is biased towards those nations. On the UN Security Council, the most important decision-making body, only 5 nations have permanent seats with veto power. 70 years after the UN was set up in the aftermath of World War II, the victors of that war hold all the cards. Over 20 years ago, at the time of the genocide in Rwanda, Gerard van Bohoem served on the Security Council as Deputy Ambassador for New Zealand. Now his country's back on the Council and he is the ambassador. He told me without reform soon, the Security Council will become less effective.
There are two sorts of problems actually. Countries not on the Council don't see it as relevant to solving their problems. But there's also a problem that the permanent members do not use the Council as a vehicle for solving problems so much as a vehicle to improve solutions they've worked out in another context. And that is a problem. So the Council isn't being able to live up to its function because it isn't actually being used for the purpose it was designed.
Russian Ambassador Vitaly Churkin doesn't just clash with his US counterpart Samantha Power on Syria. The atmosphere in the Security Council chamber has also been soured by the situation in Ukraine. Most observers believe reform of the Council and the whole organisation is urgently needed, but unlikely to happen anytime soon. The UN has so many problems and imperfections, but 70 years on, it remains the only place where the countries of the world come together to talk about things. Without it, there'd be far less global dialogue. James Bays, Al Jazeera.